Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He came home after a long trip, craving silence, only to find strangers partying in his pool, steaks on his grill, and a forged letter claiming he approved it all. But this wasn't just a trespass, it was war, and he had a plan, one that started with draining every last drop. I pulled into my driveway a little after 8 in the evening, bone-tired and dust-covered from a 3-day contract trip out near Abilene. The sky was turning that deep shade of Texas indigo, and all I wanted was a cold beer, a long shower, and the familiar silence of my 6-acre slice of peace. Instead, I saw headlights, lots of them. At first, I thought maybe some folks had taken a wrong turn, but as I eased my truck closer to the house, it became clear. This wasn't a mistake. There were at least 20 cars parked along the gravel shoulder near my fence, some even partially inside my pasture gate. SUVs, sedans, a damn convertible with a big HOA sticker on the back window. One truck was backed halfway into my eastern firebreak, tires crushing through wild grass I'd just reseeded last spring. I cut the engine and sat still for a moment, blinking at the sight before me. There were flashing lights coming from the back of the property. Music. Real music was pumping through the air, a thudding bass line echoing off the hills like some suburban war cry. I stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, and felt that familiar tightness crawl up the back of my neck. I made my way down the side of the house, past the mesquite trees, and rounded the corner toward the pool area, and I froze. There were dozens of people, strangers, milling around in bikinis and swim trunks, drinks in hand, some already in the pool, others lounging on my patio furniture like they'd booked the place for the weekend. My grill was uncovered and in use. Someone had the nerve to throw a full slab of ribs on it. I spotted a long folding table covered in champagne flutes and fruit platters. Someone had set up lights, real equipment, even a Bluetooth projector rigged to the pergola I built with my own 2 hands. I walked further in, stunned. "Hey, excuse me," I yelled, trying to get someone's attention. Some teenage kid holding a Red Bull mimosa turned and looked at me like I was the one trespassing. "You lost or something, man?" I kept walking. A group of women in matching Summer Harmony Splash tank tops stood by the pool steps, toasting with what looked like actual flutes of Prosecco. One of them laughed and said, "That must be the caretaker." I almost choked. That's when I saw her. Karen Drummond. Blonde bob, white linen jumpsuit, clipboard in one hand, glass in the other, standing at the head of the makeshift DJ booth like she was Moses parting the suburbs. She was holding court with a group of guests, talking about community investment and unity through shared spaces. My pool, the one I built 6 years ago, with permits, cash, and sweat, was now apparently a goddamn HOA peace garden. "Karen," I barked. She turned like she wasn't the least bit surprised to see me. "Oh, Grant, welcome home," she chirped, gliding over in heels that didn't belong anywhere near stone tile. "What the hell is going on?" "Relax," she said, waving her clipboard like it held divine authority. "You weren't supposed to be back until next week. We're just wrapping up the HOA's Summer Harmony Splash. It's our annual morale event." "On my land?" She laughed lightly like I was being unreasonable. "Well, the pool is technically visible from the shared bluff trail and the fence was open. Because someone broke the lock," I snapped. "This isn't HOA land. You know that." Karen smiled that tight, condescending grin I'd come to hate over the past 3 years. "Actually, I've been keeping an eye on things while you were gone. I had it cleared with the board. You've been so absent, we assumed it would be okay." "You assumed wrong," I said, pulling out my phone. "You have 30 seconds to get off my property before I call the sheriff." Before I could hit dial, a uniformed officer appeared near the entry path. Great, someone had already called them. Maybe a noise complaint. I waved him over. "Deputy, this is my land. These people are trespassing. I want them out." Karen stepped in with that same diplomatic flair she used during HOA meetings. "Officer, I'm Karen Drummond, HOA president for Desert Pines Preserve. We're holding our scheduled annual event here with verbal permission from the homeowner." "That's a lie," I snapped. She looked at the officer with mock concern. He must have forgotten. "He told me last month he was open to community use of the pool when he was out of town. I even had a key made to check on the place." "You what?" The officer raised both hands. "Okay, let's slow down. Do either of you have proof of permission or ownership right now?" "I have the deed and boundary maps in my office. Not that I need them to tell you this is my land," I growled. The cop nodded slowly. Look, sir, without hard evidence of a break-in or signed complaint, I can't forcibly remove anyone tonight, especially not if some guests believe they're here lawfully. I looked around at these people, drunk, wet, sloppy. One couple was inside my house. I could see them through the window, poking around my bookshelves. I want names. Every one of these people. This is criminal trespass. The officer shrugged. You're free to file a report in the morning, sir. But right now, unless someone's threatening you or damaging property, I can't escalate. I clenched my jaw so hard I felt it click. Fine. I turned and walked off without another word, climbed back into my truck, and parked it behind the barn where no one would see me. I spent the night in the cab, watching my own house through binoculars while strangers swam in my pool, pissed in my bushes, and drank my beer. I didn't sleep a damn minute, but by morning, I had a plan. The sun rose like it always did over the hills of South Texas, golden and mean. I stepped out of my truck just after 6, body aching, jaw tight, eyes stinging from the worst sleep I never got. My yard looked like the aftermath of a low-budget music festival. Beer cans glinted in the grass. Plastic plates floated in the pool. One of my deck chairs had been dragged halfway into the mesquite grove like a drunken sacrifice. The hedges around the cabana were trampled. My smoker was open, and someone had left a half-burnt brisket inside like a culinary war crime. I unlocked the back door to the house. The smell hit me immediately. Liquor, perfume, wet towels, and someone's goddamn cologne wafting from the hallway. I scanned the living room. A throw pillow was on the floor. A set of earbuds I didn't recognize lay tangled near the fireplace. There was lipstick on the rim of my favorite coffee mug. I found a crusted wine glass in the bathroom sink. My home, my goddamn sanctuary, had been used like a rented Airbnb. I walked into the kitchen. On the counter was a laminated sign. Welcome guests of Desert Pines. Please enjoy the facilities and respect the property. Contact HOA leadership with concerns. KD. Below it sat an empty champagne bottle and a tray of what used to be canapes. Next to it, a sheet of paper with a copy of my signature scrawled at the bottom. I felt my hands go cold. It was a photocopy of a permission letter, supposedly authorizing limited communal access to the pool and amenities for Desert Pines HOA events. My name was printed at the bottom, followed by a signature that looked like mine if you'd squinted, or been drunk, or both. There was no date, no notary, no official stamp, just fraud. I took a photo of it with my phone, folded it into a Ziploc, and stuck it in the lockbox in my office. Then I opened my safe, pulled out the folder with the original property surveys and boundary plats, and began flipping through documents until I found the one I wanted, the official zoning map showing the HOA line stopping a full 80 yards from my western patio. Outside, a car door slammed. I looked through the blinds. It was Thomas Brenner, lives on the HOA board 2 houses down the slope. Always pretends we're friendly when he wants to borrow my generator during storm season. He was wearing that same ratty visor he always mows in. He waved. Grant, man, that party was something, huh? Hope you're not sore about the mess. Karen said you were cool with it. Karen says a lot of things. He laughed nervously and took a few cautious steps onto my gravel path. Look, I know it caught you off guard, but hey, people really needed it. We've been locked in committee disputes for months. Everyone was talking about how generous it was of you. It wasn't, I said flatly. I didn't authorize a goddamn thing. Well, see, that's where it gets tricky, he said, scratching his temple. Karen showed us a letter with your signature. Looked official. Said you gave verbal confirmation at the last neighborhood potluck. I haven't been to a potluck in 3 years, Tom. He shifted. Right. Well, then maybe it's just a misunderstanding. You know how Karen can be, but she means well. She's just community-focused. She had keys made, I think, so she could check the pump system. Said it was being underutilized. My voice dropped. She made keys. She said you gave her one to monitor the property. For safety. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked back inside, shut the door in his face, and locked it. I felt something burning behind my eyes, but it wasn't rage. It was surgical, cold, focused. I went to the side gate. The latch was different. A new padlock had been screwed in, cheaper than the one I used, tampered with. She'd literally replaced it. I yanked it with both hands. It gave way like it wasn't even properly installed. I went around to the back, toward the pump housing and storage shed. There was fresh dirt disturbed behind the cabana. Someone had definitely been tampering near the electrical panel. I opened the cabinet. Inside was a low-end smart timer zip-tied to the main system. A QR code sticker read Desert Pines event schedule. I laughed out loud because at this point, what else could I do? Later that morning, I drove into town to meet my lawyer, Marvin Delgado. I laid out the fake letter, the HOA flyers, the tampered locks, and the story. He listened, expressionless, flipping pages like a man reviewing someone's medical chart before giving a cancer diagnosis. "Well," he said after a pause, "they're not just trespassing. This is forgery, unlawful entry, possibly insurance fraud depending on how they covered this event. You said they had equipment? Food service? Yeah, tables, heaters, tents. Looked like they hired a catering company out of Austin. Find the company, get the invoice. If it's billed to your address, that's another nail in their coffin." I nodded. "What about the police?" "They won't move on hearsay, but we'll file a trespass report and attach the forged consent letter. Meanwhile," he pulled out his tablet and tapped a few notes. "I'll draft a cease and desist for Karen and the HOA. You need to start documenting everything. Pictures, video, anytime someone steps foot on your land." That night, I checked the HOA's Facebook group. Karen had posted a photo of the party with the caption, "Thank you to Mr. Vu Grant Holloway for opening his gorgeous home to the Desert Pines community. Unity begins with generosity." And people were praising her. What a queen! Best HOA president ever. We need more events like this. I felt like I was watching a snake swallow a goat while people clapped. But then I saw it. The next event had already been scheduled. Splashback Saturday, open pool day for all residents, live DJ, family games, and community BBQ. Same location. They weren't just treating my land like a public park. They were planning another invasion. And this time, I wasn't going to call the cops. I was going to get my land back. My way. By Monday morning, I was already 3 cups into the bitterest coffee I could brew and knee-deep in my old storage folders, flipping through blueprints and electrical layouts like I was preparing to bomb a dam. The plans were dusty, stained with sweat, and full of half-sketched revisions. But they were mine. I'd designed and built the pool system myself back in 2017. No contractors, no cut corners. Just me, a rented excavator, and 2 months of back pain. And now, every line of PVC and every solenoid valve was about to become a weapon. The drainage system was still intact, buried under the flagstone patio, hidden behind the cabana wall. It was never meant for casual use, but in case of emergency, it could redirect the entire pool's volume through a sloped trench into my gray water septic holding zone. In other words, I could drain 10,000 gallons of water in under 15 minutes, quietly, efficiently, and completely. I spent the better part of the day inspecting the access ports and re-lubing the primary outflow valve. The actuator still worked. I rewired the override switch to a manual pull lever and added a lockbox just in case. I wasn't sure if I'd need to use it, but the thought of Karen's next event drying up mid-margarita made me feel more human again. Later that afternoon, I took a detour to City Hall, not the front desk, not the public office. No, I went straight to the back, where my old buddy Clarence worked. He was the zoning compliance guy, semi-retired, pushing 70, and built like a tree stump. I'd helped him fix the drainage on his hunting cabin years ago, so now it was time to cash in a favor. "Karen Drummond," he muttered, peering at his screen through thick bifocals. "Yeah, she's been poking around. Filed a temporary insurance policy for an event on a community annex center." "Annex?" I leaned in. "Yeah. Location address matches your property parcel grant. She submitted it digitally last week. No permit, of course. Just a liability waiver and a bullshit community map that shows your pool area as neutral use land. She listed it under HOA Civic Enhancement. Real cute. Can I get a copy?" Clarence snorted. "I'll do better." He printed 3 copies and stapled them himself. By evening, I'd also tracked down the catering company she'd used, Blue Cactus Catering. Friendly guy on the phone confirmed they were hired under a Desert Pines HOA summer program. Invoice paid from the HOA's general account. Delivery address, my goddamn front gate. At this point, I was juggling 3 active lies. Forged access letter, misrepresented insurance coverage, and now misused HOA funds. It wasn't just a rogue party anymore. It was criminal fraud, layered, bold, and intentional. Marvin was going to have a field day. But just as I was starting to feel like things were back in my control, I got a notification from my security system. Motion detected. West Gate camera. I tapped into the live feed. There she was, Karen. In broad daylight, wearing her usual cream blouse and those knockoff designer sunglasses, standing on my driveway next to a man I didn't recognize. Contractor, big guy, clipboard, ball cap, measuring wheel. She was pointing at the pool gate, waving her hand toward the pergola, making little air rectangles like she was designing a wedding venue. The contractor nodded, took notes, and even entered the property through the side entrance. They walked along the stone path. Karen kept gesturing like she owned the place. I screen recorded the entire thing. The contractor left 30 minutes later. Karen stayed behind. She crouched down by the gatepost and did something. Couldn't see what exactly, but when I went outside afterward, I found a freshly installed RFID reader with the HOA logo on it. Not only had she ordered a copy of the key, she just tried to install a digital access device on my private land like it was a goddamn clubhouse. I ripped it off with a crowbar and threw it in the fire pit. That night, Marvin filed a formal complaint with the county attaching the forged letter, the catering invoice billed to the wrong address, the falsified insurance claim, and screenshots from the security footage. He also served Karen with a preliminary cease and desist via certified mail and email. Not that it would stop her. I knew Karen. She'd double down before she ever backed off. And sure enough, the next morning, I woke up to a pink envelope stuffed in my mailbox, hand-delivered. Notice of counteraction, allegation of verbal contract breach. In it, Karen, through her personal attorney, claimed that I had verbally agreed to a standing access agreement for HOA recreational use of the pool area. She cited community reliance, public expectation, and precedent of cooperative behavior. She even referenced the increased morale metrics among HOA members after the last event as proof of benefit. Marvin laughed so hard he nearly dropped his phone. "You know what this means," he said. "We're in it now. This isn't just neighborhood noise anymore. She's trying to construct a case. That's good. That's real good." Why? Because now she's put it in writing, and every word can be shredded under deposition. That night, I finished the last of the drainage prep, checked the pressure valves, purged the line, locked the panel, and slid the key into a weatherproof pouch taped under the stone bench. Ready. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I poured a drink, turned on the porch light, sat on my swing, and smiled into the night. Because let them come. This time, the water wouldn't be waiting for them. The forecast that Saturday promised high 90s, dry air, and just enough breeze to keep people pretending they weren't roasting alive. Perfect weather for a community pool party. If, it weren't on private land, hosted by a delusional HOA president with a god complex. By noon, the invasion had begun. I watched from my workshop window as the first car rolled in, then another. And another. SUVs, minivans, and sedans, some with HOA bumper magnets, others with custom license plate frames that read things like Suburb Life, Best Life. At least 30 cars in total lined the access road and shoulder near my property, parking under no trespassing signs like they were invisible. I didn't bother stepping out. Not yet. The guests came in waves, families with coolers, women in coordinated sundresses and floppy hats, kids in matching floaties. Someone even brought a damn cornhole set and set it up near my gazebo. I saw a bouncy house being inflated on my lawn, the blower plugged into my outdoor outlet. 2 men unloaded lighting trusses from a rental truck. There was a full-blown DJ booth being assembled next to the pergola, complete with uplighting fog machine and banners that read, "Splashback Saturday, Desert Pines HOA." By 1 p.m., the party was in full swing. Music thumped loud enough to rattle my windows. Laughter echoed across the hills. Someone popped a confetti cannon by the cabana, showering the pool deck in little gold stars. A community unity banner fluttered above the entrance gate, attached with zip ties to my wrought iron arch. At 1:30, I stepped out. No shouting, no threats. I walked calm, dressed in work boots, jeans, and a plain black t-shirt, sunglasses on. Ball cap low. The moment I crossed the gravel, a woman near the sangria table spotted me. "Oh, there he is, the host." People clapped. They clapped. A man I'd never seen before walked up with a grin and extended his hand. "Brother, thanks so much for opening this place up. Karen told us you were a little hesitant, but I gotta say, this is paradise." I stared at him, didn't say a word, just kept walking. Karen was at the far end of the pool, surrounded by a semicircle of folding chairs. She wore a navy blue romper and heels again, like she was keynote speaker at the HOA Oscars. She was halfway through a toast, wine glass raised, when she spotted me. "Grant," she called out, cheerful but wary. "You made it." I didn't stop. I walked straight past the buffet, past the photo booth, complete with prop hats and glittery signs that said "Proud to be Pines," and toward the pergola. "Hold up," Karen said, quickening her steps behind me. "If you've come to make a scene, I'll have to ask you." I reached the control cabinet, took out my key, inserted it into the old metal panel, clicked open the hatch. Karen's voice tightened. "Excuse me, that's our equipment area. You're not authorized to—" I didn't even look at her. I gripped the lever inside, yanked. A low hum filled the air, then a deep gurgle like a bathtub the size of a parking lot had just pulled the plug. Water began to shift. Waves lapped sharply against the pool walls. A few kids squealed in confusion. Then the water started to drop. Not quickly, at first, but then faster. One of the women in the shallow end let out a sharp "hey" as the waterline sank beneath her knees. The man on the inflatable pizza slice tipped backward into nothing. The DJ cut the music. The crowd began murmuring. Some stood, some backed away. Someone screamed when they saw the whirlpool forming near the drain. Karen rushed to my side, grabbing my arm. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I turned, slow and calm. "I'm not stopping your event, Karen. I'm just removing my water from my pool on my property." The color drained from her face. She let go. People were stepping out now, dripping, confused. Some tried to help kids out as the swirling drain pulled debris and pool toys into the vortex. Champagne flutes were toppling. The photo booth lights flickered. One guy yelled, "Is this a prank?" A wave of foam cups and napkins slid across the exposed tile as the floor of the pool revealed itself, stained from years of use, now steaming under the hot sun. The hum of the drainage system was steady, like a ritual being carried out in slow motion. And then came the phones. Everywhere I turned, people were filming, some from the party, some from the bluff trail above. I saw a kid live streaming on TikTok, narrating in disbelief. "Dude, the owner just drained the whole ass pool while the HOA's party was happening. This is like vengeance cinema." Karen stood frozen. Her hands trembled at her sides. "This is illegal. You're causing panic, property damage." I leaned in. That's rich, coming from someone who filed insurance under a fake address and replaced my gate lock. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. By 2:15, the last of the water had vanished. All that remained was a silent basin, scattered confetti stars baking on the tile, a lonely inflatable swan listing to one side like a dead fairy. People were leaving now, quietly. One family dragged their cooler with their heads down. The DJ packed up his laptop. Even the bouncy house crew deflated their equipment without a word. Karen stood alone. I walked back to the house. Didn't say another word. Locked the gate behind me. Went inside, cracked a beer, sat on the couch. And I waited. Because draining the pool wasn't the end. It was just the alarm bell. Now the whole city was watching. By sunrise Sunday, my inbox had turned into a digital battlefield. I woke up to over 60 new messages, most of them from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old college buddies, a cousin from Vermont, 2 ex-girlfriends, even Marvin's paralegal who wrote only, "Bro, you're trending." I opened my phone. My face, sunglasses, ball cap, cold stare, was frozen mid-stride in at least a dozen viral clips. TikToks with captions like, "HOA gets owned on private property. Texas man drains pool, drains HOA's soul. Karen's wettest nightmare." Each video was slightly different, but the message was the same. Guy comes home, finds unauthorized party, drains. The pool, while everyone's inside, becomes folk hero. The internet moved fast. There were reaction videos, memes, and even a remix of the drainage sounds layered with trap beats and Karen screaming in the background. I didn't say a word publicly, not online, not in any comments. I just watched. But someone else did speak. Channel 9, our local news outlet, ran a segment that evening. Private pool, party ends in unexpected drain. Is HOA leadership out of control? They used drone footage from someone on the bluff trail showing the party mid-chaos. My name was blurred, but everyone in Desert Pines knew exactly who it was. Karen, of course, couldn't resist her spotlight. Monday morning, she went full PR damage control. A Facebook post from the official HOA page read, "We regret the unfortunate incident at Saturday's community event. While miscommunication occurred regarding access permissions, our intention was always to uplift the neighborhood spirit and foster inclusion. Miscommunication. The word was doing a lot of heavy lifting for a woman who'd trespassed, installed unauthorized locks, forged documents, and repurposed HOA funds like she was running a shell company out of my backyard. Then came the big one. Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Officer Hanks, same deputy from the first night. His voice was clipped, professional. "Mr. Holloway, just a heads up. A formal investigation has been opened into the HOA president's actions. We received a tip with video evidence, invoices, and documentation." I smirked. "From a concerned citizen, I presume." "Yup," he said. "Also, the DA's office wants to speak with you. They're looking at multiple infractions: fraud, forgery, possible misuse of nonprofit funds, trespassing, and something about false police reports." I thanked him and hung up, then called Marvin. He was practically giddy. "We're on offense now, Grant," he said. "They're combing through HOA financials as we speak. The insurance fraud alone is juicy. The fake event policy listed your address as a community annex, which doesn't even legally exist. And you're going to love this. Karen didn't just sign it herself. She submitted it under a falsified title, Vice President, Land Partnerships. That's not even a real role. Nope, invented. Also, she reimbursed herself over $2,000 from the HOA account for logistical coordination. That includes catering, party favors, a DJ deposit, and a rental invoice for something called Fog Ambience System. A fog machine? Yep. HOA funds paid for her to feel like she was in a music video. The county began requesting records. Karen started squirming. That Wednesday, 3 of the HOA board members resigned, quietly. One of them, a meek guy named Dennis who'd once borrowed my chainsaw, left a note in my mailbox. I didn't know the extent of what she was doing. "I'm sorry. Please don't lump us all in." By Thursday, the Desert Pines HOA Facebook group was locked down, comments disabled, previous posts deleted, but screenshots were already circulating. One included a message Karen sent just before the second event. "He's never here, and honestly, it's a waste of space. This is about vision, not ownership." Ownership. Not negotiable, Karen. On Friday, Channel 9 ran a follow-up. This time, they got a hold of the catering invoice. Then the footage of the RFID gate reader being installed. The reporter used words like unauthorized access, private asset abuse, and possible criminal conspiracy under color of HOA authority. That phrase stuck with me. Under color of HOA authority. It wasn't just some dumb pool party anymore. It was a case of a small suburban power structure overreaching so far that it tried to swallow a man's home. And I wasn't the only one watching. People in nearby neighborhoods began reaching out. I got emails from folks in other HOAs saying things like, "We've had similar problems." One guy from Arizona sent me a 3-page letter about his own HOA president using fees to install a koi pond in her front yard for ambiance. Meanwhile, Karen, she went silent. No more statements, no more posts, no more brunch meetings with the board, because the DA had officially opened a criminal case, and she knew it. It was a Tuesday morning when I saw the unmarked cruiser pull into Desert Pines' main loop. I was sipping coffee on my back porch, boots on the railing, watching a couple of deer nose around the mesquite. Peaceful, too peaceful. The kind of quiet that makes you suspicious in HOA country. The cruiser stopped in front of Karen's house. A pristine, stucco 2-story sheet over-landscaped to death. White stone planters, solar uplighting, decorative mulch arranged like art. You could tell the HOA dues went somewhere at least. 2 officers stepped out. One of them knocked, the other flanked the porch. I leaned forward, setting my mug down slow. Karen opened the door in a bathrobe and pearls. I shit you not, pearls. There was no screaming, no resistance. Just a long, confused conversation, followed by the unmistakable motion of handcuffs being applied. The moment they walked her down the front path, a neighbor from across the cul-de-sac was already filming. The video hit next door within 15 minutes. Breaking: HOA President Karen Drummond arrested. Charges unknown. I knew the charges. I'd read the DA's preliminary filing myself. Marvin forwarded it to me the night before. Criminal trespass, forgery of private documents, insurance fraud, misappropriation of HOA funds, filing a false report with law enforcement, fraudulent, misrepresentation of property access, tampering with private security infrastructure, 7 charges. 2 of them felonies. one with a max sentence of 20 years. And the best part? This wasn't even civil court yet. By the end of the week, the Desert Pines HOA was on life support. The acting treasurer issued a panicked letter to all homeowners stating that the HOA was temporarily suspending all discretionary operations due to internal auditing and pending legal consultation. Translation: they were hemorrhaging money and didn't know how to function without Karen's iron fist. At the emergency board meeting, which took place in someone's garage with no refreshments or printed agendas, one homeowner live-streamed the whole thing. The audio was crap, but you could hear the panic. Questions like, are we liable for the events? Where did the $11,000 in community improvements go? Why were there invoices from a mobile spa service? I didn't attend. I just watched the recording later with Marvin. That woman ran the HOA like a personal ATM, he said. But now it's time to turn this into something useful. You ready to file the civil suit? Hell yes! We launched it on Monday, a $1,200,000 civil action against Karen Drummond and the HOA as a legal entity. Claims included property damage, unauthorized access and use of private land, emotional distress, defamation via official HOA communication, lost value due to illegal activity associated with the property, and punitive damages for willful abuse of authority. Marvin filed it clean and loud. Press release included. Local media ate it up. Channel 9 interviewed him outside the courthouse. He used the phrase scorched earth litigation and smiled for the camera. Karen, now out on bail, tried to fight back through her lawyer, a smug local named Timmons, who'd once defended a guy for operating a crypto mining operation out of a laundromat. Timmons argued that there was no malicious intent, and that Ms. Drummond acted under the assumption of implied communal support. Marvin crushed that in the first motion hearing. We had security footage, forged letters, copies of city filings, proof of money transfers, and 3 separate witness statements from contractors who confirmed Karen represented herself as the owner of my property. Oh, and the HOA's own bylaws, which clearly stated no HOA authority extends to parcels outside defined community boundaries. By week's end, the judge granted full discovery access to HOA's finances for the last 5 years. 2 more board members resigned that day. And then came the audit. Turns out, Karen had been playing games for a while, approving reimbursements to herself for neighborhood morale, which included $1,500 for a margarita machine rental, $3,200 to a decor consultant, who turned out to be her niece, $900 in security system testing, aka installing RFID tech on my gate, and $600 on custom monogram towels with her initials. She also used HOA funds to pay for digital asset management, which, surprise, was her own personal blog. By now, even Karen's defenders had gone quiet. The same neighbors who once clapped during her speeches now avoided eye contact at the grocery store. One of them left a bottle of whiskey on my porch with a note that said, "You were right. I'm sorry." Mark, Lot 14. Marvin, meanwhile, filed a petition to freeze the HOA's operational budget until the conclusion of the civil trial. The court approved. The HOA couldn't even pay for lawn service anymore. And the cherry on top, the sheriff's department issued a search warrant for Karen's house. Inside her home office, they found a binder labeled Community Harmony, Outreach and Leverage, which included printed drafts of forged documents, false thank you letters supposedly written by residents with identical handwriting, and a spreadsheet titled Future Cooperative Land Usage Targets, top of the list. My address. The courtroom wasn't grand. No polished oak or marble columns, just beige walls, worn carpet, and fluorescent lights that made everyone look hungover. But what it lacked in glamour, it made up for in tension. Because across the aisle from me sat Karen Drummond, powdered, pressed, and pretending she hadn't tried to colonize my property like it was some kind of suburban manifest destiny. Her lawyer Timmons wore a slick gray suit and an even slicker smirk. He'd been trying to delay the trial for weeks, filing continuances, requesting extensions, claiming medical complications ranging from anxiety-induced vertigo to seasonal throat strain. None of it worked. The judge, a no-nonsense former Army JAG with the nameplate on or Elise Torrance, was having exactly none of his bullshit. Opening statements were a study in contrast. Timmons called it a tragic misunderstanding inflamed by online sensationalism, claimed Karen genuinely believed she had the right to access my land and that the events benefited the greater good. He even invoked the spirit of community in the face of individualism. Marvin stood up, walked to the center of the room, and said plainly, "This is a case about theft. Not of money, though we'll get to that, but of autonomy, safety, and dignity. My client's land was invaded, his identity as a homeowner was undermined, and all of it was orchestrated by a woman who believed rules didn't apply to her. Then came the evidence. First, the deed. Black and white proof that my property existed outside the HOA's boundaries, a full 80 yards from the nearest community lot. Then the security footage. Karen installing the RFID reader, giving a contractor a property tour like she was hosting a segment on HGTV. Then the catering invoices, delivered to my address, paid from HOA funds. Then the forged permission letter. Marvin brought out a handwriting expert who casually dismantled Karen's fake signature like it was finger paint, said it lacked natural variation and had been likely traced from a printed copy. Then the kicker, the binder. That laminated monstrosity found in Karen's home office, containing draft versions of forged thank you letters, HOA event proposals listing my property as a pilot space for future cooperative use, and an internal list of behavioral leverage, tools for handling non-participating neighbors. The courtroom got so quiet during that part, you could hear the HVAC wheezing overhead. Karen's face stayed frozen, not surprised, just brittle, like she was trying to hold together the last pieces of the illusion with pure willpower. But it got worse, because Marvin called Thomas Brenner, that fence-riding HOA board member, to the stand. And under oath, Thomas cracked. He admitted Karen showed them the fake letter as signed permission, told them I'd be gone for weeks, and that she'd personally guaranteed access. Said he felt pressured to support it or risk being labeled anti-community. Then came two contractors, one who built the RFID post, the other who installed the outdoor lighting. Both testified that Karen claimed to be co-owner of the property and said the HOA had extended jurisdiction under pending boundary revisions. There were no pending boundary revisions. On the third day, the jury watched clips from the infamous pool draining incident. They laughed. Even the bailiff smirked, but Judge Torrance didn't. She said flatly, "It's not funny. It's evidence of restraint." He drained his pool instead of confronting dozens of trespassers. That shows control, not aggression. Timmons tried a last-ditch defense. He presented character witnesses, two elderly HOA members who described Karen as organized and dedicated. One claimed she once personally picked up litter after a fireworks event. It landed like a wet napkin. Then came closing arguments. Timmons tried to paint Karen as a woman crushed under the weight of neighborhood leadership, driven to extremes by lack of community engagement. Marvin calmly reminded the jury that Karen broke into a property, lied to the police, used HOA money like a personal fund, and constructed a narrative of communal need to cover personal ambition. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours. Verdict: liable on all counts. Total judgment awarded $1,200,000 in damages, plus an additional $250,000 in punitive damages for willful misconduct. The moment the numbers were read, Karen slumped. Not cried, not gasped, just sank, like air had finally stopped pretending to hold her up. Reporters were waiting outside the courthouse. Marvin gave a statement. I didn't. I just walked past them, straight to my truck, opened the door, and let out the deepest exhale I'd held in a year. HOA members began meeting privately that same week to dissolve the organization. The accountant they brought in called the books a nightmare of fantasy accounting. Turns out there were no reserves left. HOA insurance didn't cover willful fraud. They were finished. Karen's personal assets were frozen pending appeal. Her house was put on the market. Her car repossessed. Her face, once on every community flyer and newsletter, now floated in silence across group chats as a meme captioned, "Welcome to my pool. Yours truly, the defendant." It took me 3 weeks to refill the pool, not because I couldn't afford a faster method. I could have had water trucks out here in 2 days, but because I wanted to do it on my own terms. One hose, one valve, quietly. Every gallon reclaiming something they'd tried to steal. The land felt different now. Not just the silence, though that helped, but the sense of weight lifted. I could walk barefoot across the flagstone without expecting a stranger's towel or a plastic champagne flute under my heel. No camera drones, no HOA flyers on my gate, no Karen. Her house sold to a retired couple from Oregon who'd heard of the whole fiasco. But, as the wife told me during a casual driveway chat, we just figured if the worst already happened, it's probably safe now. They brought me a basket of homemade banana bread and asked permission to prune the edge of the fence line where our trees brushed. I nearly cried. The HOA officially dissolved 4 months after the verdict. The paperwork was dry and bureaucratic. The remaining homeowners had to agree via supermajority. Only one objected, some guy named Jeff who thought an HOA made property values look classy. He moved out a month later after his lawn was cited for 3 violations by no one in particular. The city, however, did not ignore what happened. A subcommittee was formed to evaluate the legal overreach and potential misconduct of unregulated private homeowner associations. They asked me to speak. I wore jeans and my cleanest boots. I told them the truth. I didn't hate structure. I hated entitlement disguised as community. I hated being told that private meant until it's useful to us. I hated being treated like a myth in my own home. They listened. Last I heard, the city was pushing for new guidelines, mandatory external audits for HOA budgets, legal limits on jurisdictional claims, and a registry of private property lines with preemptive legal warnings against HOA encroachment. It was something. Karen, she didn't appeal. Her sentence came quietly. 14 years with a minimum of 7 served before parole eligibility. Charges consolidated but not dismissed. Fraud, forgery, criminal misrepresentation. Abuse of fiduciary power. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to. The system had finally done what it was supposed to, but I did leave one message. Not to her directly, just to the world. A sign. I had it carved from oak, lacquered and sealed, then mounted in the stone wall beside the pool steps. Big block letters burned deep into the wood. Private property. The water is mine. The audacity was yours. Do not cross. Some people laugh when they see it. Some get quiet. I don't care either way. The message isn't for them. It's for anyone who ever thinks that private is just a suggestion.